In today's video, we're going to be taking a look here at the tropics around North and Central America because we do have a lot of activity both in the Pacific and the Atlantic. We're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern as a whole, though, where there is storminess, some very unique storminess happening as we have multiple cold fronts coming through, which will bring cooler air at times here over the next 2 weeks or so. So we're going to be discussing all of these things. But let's first off take a look at these tropics because we have two new areas in the Atlantic to track. Obviously, we saw Imelda, we saw Gabrielle pretty recently, Humberto. Those all have moved out and basically moved on. But we still have more on the way. It's only October. There's a lot of time to go here in the tropical Atlantic season, and obviously the Pacific isn't slowing down. So we have a few things to discuss. And we'll start here with these Atlantic threats. We have two different types of threats. We have one that we would call like a homegrown type threat here near Florida and over top of Florida, and that is your lesser chance of development at this point. And then we have one out here in more of like the middle of the Atlantic, and we call this the MDR, short for Main Development Region. And this one is going to be one that we really need to watch for everywhere. The Gulf, off the East Coast, well out in the middle of the Atlantic, the Caribbean and Southern Caribbean. This one we can see pretty much go anywhere. And then obviously we have this one out there in the Pacific that we'll talk about in a minute. So let's go over some percentages here. We'll talk about the MDR one first, just kind of working our way from right to left. We do have a 0% chance of development over the next 2 days, but currently a 20% chance of development over the next 7. And the majority of models, actually the vast majority of models, do have this one pretty much developing. So this is going to be a long-term threat that we probably are going to need to be watching for the coming weeks. As we just navigate further westward here, we can see this one over top of Florida sits at a 10% chance of development over the next 2 days and the next 7 days. And I've always said when it's the same risk level for the 2 and 7 day period, typically that means that this threat is a shorter range threat. So we're looking at probably the next 2 to 3 days if this one develops, and probably not much of a threat beyond that because it's going to move over land. So that's another one that we're going to watch on the models. We do see this GFS model show storminess around the southeastern United States, but really nothing comes of it. But we do see likely a hurricane develop off of this MDR one. I'll let that play out real quickly. So we see it right here, the wave. This is by the 7th, so already multiple days from now. Here is by the 9th. It's right there at the end of this area, pretty close to the Eastern Caribbean there. And then we can see this one move over top of those areas, eventually curving out to sea. But right around here is where this model wants to indicate more of like an I type development. So that's where I get the likelihood of this one being a hurricane on this model from. We do have this area here in the Eastern Pacific that we need to watch. A 70% chance of development over the next 2 days, but a 90% chance of development over the next 7 days. So this one is a really, really high chance of development. And we can see by the 14th, we do see a hurricane out there. This one does curve into Mexico and brings storminess there to the Four Corner states, maybe even Texas here. We can see just like a really large area experiencing storminess if this one curves into Mexico and eventually the southwestern United States. So multiple things to watch out there in the tropics. We will go ahead here and take a look at the overall model guidance for the upcoming pattern. Now here's the past 2 days, which is going to be your first 2 days of October. And you can see that we have experienced basically what we've been expecting to experience. Cooler temperatures along the west coast. We call this a negative PNA, which stands for Pacific North American Oscillation. This encourages warmth to the areas east of this region. So we do see that warmth spreading out throughout a lot of the central United States and central Canada. We do see this backdoor cold front, which just essentially means it's not coming through the central states into the east. It's coming down from more of like the northeast down southwestward over the eastern states. A backdoor cold front is what we call it. And that's why it's been pretty crisp, pretty nice weather along the eastern states. Actually a little chilly even, with temperatures below room temperature for a lot of these areas. So average to below average temperatures have prevailed along the eastern seaboard for the first 2 days here so far. Let's talk about what's upcoming though and go over the storminess first things first. Let's take a look. I mean, today, pretty dry, unless you're in the northwest here where we do have quite a bit of precipitation, showery activity, heavier showers. Then around the Gulf and southeast, there is some activity, and outside of that, it's just going to be really, really spotty bits of precipitation. As we keep going towards Friday afternoon tomorrow, from the time I'm making this video, we do see a low trying to form here, but the primary low is actually here over areas just to the east of the northern Rockies there in the northern plains, like near the Dakotas. So as a result of this, it does have a little bit of a cold front boundary, so we see cooler air diving southward along the western states, and this is enough to where we see plenty of precipitation around, but also some bits of blue throughout the Sierra Nevada mountains and some of the Rockies there, so some snowfall happening as a result of that. As we reach towards Saturday afternoon, we see this low all kind of comes together, 994 there, just to the east of the Rockies there in Colorado, and this is enough to bring, first off, widespread precipitation for the Northwest, the Rockies, and the Northern Plains, but also snowfall along some of your higher elevations there in the Rockies. Still the east, unless you're along the Gulf Coast or the southeast coast there, relatively quiet. Sunday afternoon here, this is going to be the 5th of October, 993 there just to the north of Minnesota in south central Canada. This one does feature a cold front, warm front dynamic here, so this will be pulling up warmer air into a lot of the eastern states as a result of that warm front being up above, but there is cooler air trying to swing in, and this is going to be your first threat for a big cool down that we're going to be watching. We do see plenty of snowfall happening around the Rockies for Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. So snowy storm for this time of year. Monday afternoon, that low goes ahead and moves on. We do have this cold front kind of just left over and hanging out, and there is showers and thunderstorms developing along that. We also see overall storminess kind of traveling northward from the Gulf up into the deep south states and encompassing a lot more of these states with precipitation, so well saturated compared to what we were seeing. Tuesday the 7th, this frontal boundary is still swinging in, and it's really getting a strong push because we have warmer air now surging up the western states. So we have a ridge over the west, trough in the central states here, and that's enough of an imbalance to try to shove all of this activity into the east. We see a little bit higher precipitation happening along this frontal boundary, and you can imagine, we've always heard, when warm and cold air mixes, it really creates a lot of storminess. And since we've had this warm, humid push in the east, that's still the conditions we're dealing with, and this cooler, drier air is trying to swing in. And as that interaction is happening, we're actually seeing this cold front intensify, at least as far as precipitation, and that is the result that you see here, just heavier precipitation along that frontal boundary. By Wednesday, this cold front's really moving into the east to the point where we have this ridge now over the kind of western central states, and then a milder trough here in the east, which will bring cooler temperatures than we've been overall experiencing to a lot of these areas. Still plenty of precipitation in there as a result of this. As we keep going towards Thursday here on the 9th, that front has now moved further and further southward, now relatively low amounts of precipitation, but things are getting even cooler here in the east as a result of this continuing to travel southward. We do see a trough over the west coast with a ridge just to the east of it. So this is going to really spell out, I would say, a pattern that brings cooler temperatures to the east, but not long-lived cooler temperatures to the east. Really large ridge here, and again, cooling trend for the northwest, which is going to just make this all kind of move from west to east relatively easily. As we keep going towards Friday, you might have noticed, I'll move it again, but Thursday we have our tropical cyclone there, and it moves northward straight up into these western parts, similarly to the GFS model, but it's a little further west. We're seeing more Nevada, Arizona, Utah getting involved. But this really creates for Friday afternoon a really stormy look out west overall, and it is cooler again, so we see Sierra Nevada snowfall once more and some northern Rockies snowfall once more as well, with the strongest, most dominant low over the Dakotas once again. Still, by this point, we have now a really decent trough over the west, but this ridge is still over the central states and troughing over the east. So really, really wavy pattern by this point. And by Saturday, that trough in the east is lifting off as we get a more elongated trough here in the west. Low trying to develop over Colorado, so we feel like we're kind of in Groundhog Day now. I feel like we've kind of just gone through the motions and kind of gotten back to the same point we were at a few days before this. But this low is developing Rocky Mountain snowfall and overall an abundance of precipitation around these areas, with some milder amounts of precipitation along that southeast area. As we keep going towards Sunday the 12th, we get a low. This is really crucial here between the Hudson Bay and Great Lakes. We always talk about this, and typically colder air is going to follow this into the eastern states. So let's see what happens by Monday. We get another low forming here over the north central states, so precipitation is around for these areas. The southeast is a little bit more saturated with this precipitation, and we still see some northern Rockies snowfall. Tuesday, the 14th, everything's kind of moving eastward. This is the first day where we really see a little bit of a descent in that cooler air that's taking place a little further eastward than the west coast, which is just going to give this enough cushion to start influencing some warmer air to move into that western pocket, which would move all of this cold air eastward. Now we have this low here, now a second one between the Hudson Bay and Great Lakes. A warm front-ish type look here to the east, lower precipitation overall, and this is pulling a lot of this moisture and warmer air up the east coast once again. A little bit of a messier look. By Wednesday, we get another low over the north central states, 995 there. Lots of precipitation around for these areas, obviously. And this one looks like the one that's finally going to really pull all of the colder air in. We have this kind of cold front, warm front look. So again, milder air still in these eastern areas because of that warm front overhead, but a clear funnel of cooler air trying to move in. And now we have a much warmer pattern out west, a much more positive PNA that is going to support this cooler air just shooting right into the east. Still some Rocky Mountain snowfall taking place as well by Wednesday the 15th. Thursday the 16th, it's pretty clear what this model wants to do. It's a large scale, very intense positive PNA ridge out west. So we see that reaching well up into Canada. In this cooler air, the most substantial cold air of the season so far is shooting in low between the Hudson Bay and Great Lakes. Lots of precipitation around for the east as there's a really strong push of just conflict in the air masses. So this is, again, making everything really take off. We only have one more day on the model run here, Friday the 17th. So we really don't get to see this cold air fully arrive, but this is a really warm bubble and a really intense trough to the east of it. So this would be a very intense pattern. We also have a very major hurricane here on this model run between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba there that you might be able to see that it wants to move into the Gulf. But this is hours 360, so we're not going to pay too much mind to that. The big picture here is that this model does keep tropical systems being a factor by mid-October with no real huge break in tropical activity. So I think that's the biggest takeaway there. Now, total precipitation, really messy, similarly to what we saw yesterday. The west is looking really, really high above average. So is a lot of your northern areas in the plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast. This is all pretty positive. This area is your more concerning dry spot still. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. We do see the Southeast as a whole doing pretty nicely as well. So looking at the anomalies, again, some of those areas I pinpointed, like the West, like the Rockies in particular, some of your northern plains, upper Midwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast are closer to average, maybe even above average. Same with the Southeast. But again, this dry pocket here is your more concerning dry area, although the Mid-Atlantic and New England areas are quite dry still as well. Now, looking at the temperatures, there's that backdoor cold front. This is exactly what I was talking about. So again, cooler in the West, ridge in the central states here that you can see, and then this backdoor cold motion happening down the East Coast. This is kind of your early October pattern here. We eventually see a purely cold in the West, warm in the East pattern, especially by October 5th. But that cooler air is on the move, and it does create this kind of cold front pattern for the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast, with warmer air in the central states again, and much cooler temperatures in the West, which is why this right here is going to be short-lived and move out relatively quickly. But we do see a much more large-scale cooldown moving into the East. It's not arrived yet by this Friday the 17th, the final day on the model run, but it is on the way. So we see this really, really warm look for the East Coast, and the reason for this is because we have a low here, warm front up above it, which is pulling that warm air in, and this cooler cold front overall is swinging in, but that warmer air is getting squeezed. It's becoming very potent in that East Coast area, but that is going to be relatively short-lived because we do have a really strong look for a positive PNA during this time frame, which would really encourage colder temperatures in the central and eastern states long term if we see this look happen. So let's look at the GFS model, get kind of a second opinion. Everything obviously looks the same. We get this first cooldown, which is much more intense on this model. I mean, we're looking at the 10th here, and we see overall warmer temperatures out west, more of a positive PNA than anything, and really far below average temperatures in the east as a whole here for this time frame. After this point, we see that last pretty long. It looks like we move straight into, again, a positive PNA pattern again around that 17th, 18th, with cooler air just starting to take over for the east. It's really not as potent as it's going to be with that positive PNA look yet by this point, but something is on the way after the midway point of the month on both of these models, and they both have a cooldown around the 5th through 10th time frame. However, the GFS model is much more intense with that than the European model is, as we mentioned. Now, with all that being said, we upload every single day, so be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.